What's going on, UHL fans? This is Ferris Biscuit here for week 6, and oh my goodness, have things gotten tighter than ever. We got a lot to go through this week, so let's go ahead and jump right into it.
This week's matches saw Ben Reddington of the Dad Legend community taking on Ridiculous Hat of the Coin Conceive podcast. We also had Andrew Brown of the Happy Hearthstone podcast taking on Spivey of the 1600 Dust podcast. From there, we had Rasika of the Hero Power podcast taking on Chris Plummer of the 1600 Dust podcast. And our final match of the week saw Rod Johnson of the Tier 5 podcast taking on Ziggy Sarah of the 1600 Dust podcast. Our first match of the week saw Ben Reddington bringing his Hunter, Rogue, and Warrior classes, taking on Ridiculous Hat, bringing his Druid, Priest, and Warlock classes. In Game 1, Ben would take the early lead with his Hunter class over Hat's Priest. From there, he would take Game 2 with his Rogue over Hat's Druid, and finally, he would take Game 3 and the victory with his Warrior class over Hat's Warlock, taking a 3-0 sweep and giving Hat his first loss on the season. Our second match of the week saw Rod Johnston bringing his Druid, Mage, and Warlock classes going up against Ziggy Sarah, who brought her Mage, Rogue, and Shaman classes. In Game 1, Ziggy would come out taking the game with her Shaman class over Rod's Mage, and in Game 2, we saw her take another victory with her Rogue over Rod's Mage once more, and finally in Game 3 she was able to pull out the 3-0 victory, taking it with her Mage over Rod's Druid. Our third match of the week saw Andrew bringing his Druid, Rogue, and Warrior classes going up against Spiver, who opted to go with his Hunter, Mage, and Shaman classes. Game 1 saw Andrew coming away with a victory with his Druid over Spivey's Shaman. From there, he would also take Game 2 with his Warrior over Spivey's Hunter, and in Game 3, he was able to close it out, taking a 3-0 victory with his Rogue over Spivey's Mage. Our final match of the week saw Versika bringing his Hunter, Mage, and Shaman classes going up against Chris, who brought his Druid, Mage, and Paladin classes. In Game 1, Chris would jump out to an early 1-0 lead, taking Game 1 with his Druid over Versika's Shaman. In Game 2, it was more of the same, but this time he was able to take the win over Versika's Shaman with his Paladin. And finally, in Game 3, we saw a mirror match that saw Chris coming out on the winning end, giving him the 3-0 victory. Taking a dive into some of the weekly statistics as far as how the classes did this week, we see Rogue continue to dominate at 3-0 this week, while other classes such as Mage and Shaman were more struggling this week. An interesting note is Warrior, who had a good week, 2-0 overall, and Paladin was able to rebound, taking one victory with 0 losses this week. Looking at the overall picture after week 6 for how the classes are turning out, we see Rogue continue to dominate, as we previously mentioned, now with a 93% win percentage overall. That is by far the highest in the league, and it will be interesting to see if Rogue is able to keep up its dominance again in the league meta. It's also interesting to note this week that Mage, with the week that it had, now falls to 12-12 and 50% overall win percentage, and we see classes with the likes of Priest and Paladin, pretty popular in the meta right now. Even with the shifts, we see them continue to do really well, showing a 63% win percentage for Priest, while Paladin comes in close at 60% overall. Taking a look at the 4 players that are currently in the playoff picture, we still have Ridiculous Hat atop the standings, even with his loss this week. He's at 5-1 and has clinched a playoff spot, and this week he is joined by Andrew Brown, who was also able to clinch a playoff spot with his performance this week. In third place, we currently have Chris sitting at 3-3 with 15 games won, and from there we have Ziggy, who is currently in fourth at 3-3 with 13 games won. Turning the page now and looking at the players who are looking to make their way into the top 4, we have Rod Johnston currently at 5th, who has the same exact statistics as Ziggy, but since Ziggy was able to beat him this week, she does own the tiebreaker. From there, we do have Spivey sitting at 6th at 3-3 with 12 wins, and we also have Ben Reddington at 3-3, who has 12 wins, but does have 13 losses. And from there, finally, we have Versika, who is still looking to get that first victory of the season and will look to do so in the 7th and final week. Looking ahead at the matches that we have for Week 7, it is just absolutely mind-numbing the amount of players that are still currently looking to get into the playoffs. We do have a decider match between Spivey and Ziggy, as they are currently both sitting at 3-3. From there, we have Ridiculous Hat at 5-1, again already clinching a playoff spot, taking on Rod Johnston, who's looking to make his way into that playoff picture. Who's currently at 3-3. We have Versika still looking to get that first victory of the season, currently at 0-6, taking on Ben Reddington, who is 3-3, and then we also have Andrew, who is 4-2, who has already clinched his spot, taking on Chris, who is also looking to make his way in as he sits currently at 3-3.
As you can clearly tell, things for Week 7 are going to be insane, and I cannot wait to see how it plays out. But now it is time to announce the winner of the Weekly Pick'em for Week 6. So without further ado, our winner this week is Yellow Dart. I have reached out to you in regards to what kind of packs you would like, so if you could please get back to me, it would be greatly appreciated, and I can gladly get you those packs. That's all we have for this week. Don't forget that this is the final week that you can vote for your MVP. We have gotten an incredible amount of votes so far, but keep them coming. That way we can decide and let you know who is the winner at the end of the season. And like I said, that's all I have for now. Be sure to get your picks in for Week 7, and I will talk to you later. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend.